The first video you watched introduced the basic elements of art. In this video, we'll go over some additional terms and concepts that you'll need to know. First, let's review the 7 elements of art. Since these are the foundation of all art, you will be required to list them. How many can you recall right now? Go ahead and try. Okay, let's reveal them. Line, shape, form, value, texture, color, space. How many did you get correct? To help them remember all 7 of the elements, 2 of my students created a mnemonic device. Camel tails swing very swiftly for luck. If you can remember that sentence, it will remind you of the first letter of each element. Let's try it out. See if you can recall the sentence, then name the element that corresponds to each word in the sentence. Okay, did you remember it? Let's try. Camel helps you remember the word color. Tails stands for texture. Swing stands for shape. Very stands for value. Swiftly stands for space. For stands for form. And luck stands for line. Line is the path of a moving point, a mark made by a drawing tool or brush. Lines are often used expressively. Curving lines may feel graceful, as in the drawing by Picasso on the left, while zigzag lines might feel energetic, as in the Keith Haring drawing on the right, or they might evoke anger in another piece. Vertical lines often suggest uplift and strength. Horizontal lines create a sense of stability. Diagonal lines create a feeling of movement. Lines can be long, short, thick, or thin, etc., but they can also be implied. An implied line is one that is suggested where no visible solid line exists. It may break and then continue. In this drawing, the edge of the skull gets lost in the shadow, but the viewer easily fills in the missing information. An implied line suggests the edge of a plane without using a solid line. The drawing of the apple on the right is actually more realistic than the one on the left because of its use of implied line. Objects in the real world don't have outlines. To employ this technique, the artist often starts their drawing with a very light outline, which disappears into the shading and is erased at the edge with the highlight. An implied line occurs when the viewer mentally connects any elements that are lined up, such as the shapes of the shadow and the 3 ducks in this photo. A line can be implied with just a pointed finger or a gaze, or even the gaze of a duck. When implied line is used, the viewer's brain constructs the idea of a line, often a plane or edge of an object where no solid line exists. Shape, a 2-dimensional enclosed area. Once a line crosses over itself, a shape is created. But not all shapes have hard edges. When an artist is drawing or painting, they're always technically employing lines and shapes, not forms, because they are working in a 2-dimensional medium. An artist often uses those elements to create the illusion of form when they're drawing realistically. As you begin to draw realistically in this class, you will be drawing shadows and other objects with what I call soft edges. If you were drawing the egg in this photo, the shadows would be depicted as shapes with soft edges. Value, lightness or darkness of an object. A value scale is a tool an artist uses to demonstrate or practice their use of value, showing a progression of value from light to dark. This image demonstrates using different types of mark making to create a range of values in these 5 distinct value scales. Color. The term color identifies hue, intensity, and value. Hue is simply the name of the color: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. Intensity means the color's brightness, purity, or saturation. You can see that this illustration uses the term saturation to talk about the color's intensity. You can lower the intensity of a color or desaturate it by adding its complementary color, as in the image on the left, or gray, as in the image on the right. A color's value, or color value, is how dark or light it is. This can be changed by adding white to create tints or black to create shades. The primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, are the source of the other colors. They can be mixed to create the secondary colors, green, orange, and violet. Mixed in different proportions, the primary colors can create the tertiary colors, or the color between each primary and the adjacent secondary, such as yellow-green, between yellow and green, red-orange, between red and orange, and blue-violet, between blue and violet. Warm and cool colors. Warm and cool colors fall on opposite sides of the color wheel. Blue and its adjacent colors, violet and green, are considered cool, while shades of red, orange, and yellow are considered warm. Finally, complementary colors are pairs of color that are directly opposite one another on the color wheel. When naming the complementary colors, I always like to start with red and green, as their use as Christmas colors make them an easy pair to remember. Blue and orange are also complementary, and the final set of complementary colors is yellow and purple. Notice that each pair contains a warm color and a cool color, a primary and a secondary. Mixing a color with its complementary will result in a desaturated version of the original color. Mix in enough of the complementary and you'll get a neutral shade of brown or gray. Space. Space indicates areas of a flat image such as up, down, left, and right, and also positive and negative space, areas depicting the object in the artwork, positive space, and the space around it, negative space. The term space can also describe the illusion of space or depth that an artist creates, such as when an artist uses a foreground, middle ground, and background in a piece. Creating an illusion of space is called perspective, and it can be created in many ways. The example on the right uses the size of the objects to communicate that the larger paintbrush jar is closer than the smaller one, and both are closer than the clock. The artist has also used overlapping to tell us that the paint tube is the object closest to us. Linear perspective is a specific system for creating the illusion of depth when depicting geometric forms, such as architecture. In linear perspective, horizontal edges of forms slant toward one or more vanishing points, such as the edges of the bridge in the photograph, or the edges of the buildings in Raphael's painting, The School of Athens, on the right. Atmospheric perspective, on the other hand, can be used to convey great distances even when there is no architecture in sight. It portrays the changes of color, value, and a slight blurring effect that make objects in the distance appear hazy and muted due to particles of dust or moisture in the atmosphere. So there we have it, the 7 elements of art. Except I skipped 2. Which ones didn't get their own slide? Try using our mnemonic device to remember all 7 of the elements and then determine which ones I skipped. Okay, how did you do? Our mnemonic device is camel, tails, swing, very, swiftly, for, luck. Hopefully, you can now remember which element element each of those words stands for. I hope you were able to figure out which two elements I didn't give their very own slide.